My evening stretching routine starts with bound angle pose. This pose stretches the groin, the inner thighs, and knees. It strengthens the pelvic floor and psoas muscles, and it increases hip flexibility over time. As the hip flexor muscles loosen up, there's also a lengthening and a decompression of the entire spine. Regular practice of this pose releases stiffness and tightness from the pelvic floor and the hips, thereby increasing joint mobility and aiding in more intense hip opening poses, which is why I love to begin with this posture. The spine is elongated, the torso kept long, the chest open. It opens the entire chest, in fact. This is an effective way to increase lung capacity as well, as while maintaining the pose, it's important to focus on the breath, increasing the length of the exhalations, and with every exhale, further stretching the groin. Bound angle pose for me is a resting, meditative pose. Beyond the physical alignment, it cultivates patience, I find, as I deeply focus on my breath, sensing my body as it opens further with every exhale, the hips opening a little more as the posture is held. Such poses enhance focus and concentration in a powerful way. The spinal toning and alignment practice in poses such as this one also enhances body posture, one of the many benefits to having a consistent yoga practice. I like to do this pose in the evening before bedtime specifically because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the so-called rest and digest system. The result is a slowing of the heart rate, which helps to conserve energy and relax the intestines, which is extremely beneficial for digestion. Next pose is staff pose, or in Sanskrit, Dandasana. Danda is the Sanskrit word for rod or staff, referring to the spine being placed straight like a staff or rod. Positioning the body in this way keeps the heart at a lower level than the spine, which in turn keeps both the heart and the spine healthy. Seated forward bend is an ideal therapeutic pose for those suffering from diabetes, hypertension, menstrual disorders, and urinary disorders, as it improves blood circulation to the pelvic region. In the yogic philosophy, this pose, leaning forward, is associated with humility, as you are literally bowing the body forward, encouraging the yogi to practice with reverence and to always withdraw gracefully. It is in positions like this where we can withdraw our senses from the external world and instead turn the attention inward, bringing the brain and heart into a restful state, therefore promoting good sleep. Hanumanasana forward bend. This is a deep hip opener, obviously, and it works the hamstrings, the quads, and the psoas, along with the knee and hip joints, reaching for the knee or beyond with the forehead in a forward bend motion while engaging the core muscles brings about a wonderful stretch to the whole spine and back. I love doing this pose every single day. I do it at bedtime because I find it particularly calming. The deep stretch of the legs improves entire range of motion of the hip flexors and psoas, thus releasing tension throughout the body. Lengthening of the spine in a forward bend while in the splits helps to mobilize the hips forward and creates space for the lower back and hips to fully open. With practice, this action of a deep forward bend and splits increases flexibility over time and makes supple the muscles and ligaments connected to these functional areas of the body. As in any pose, awareness should be on the breath, towards expanding the chest and diaphragm specifically while breathing, with conscious expansion of the chest, rib cage, and upper back. Even though a lot of time practicing the splits is simply maintaining the body in this posture, when practiced in concert with the breath, it brings expansiveness in the hips and an all-around mindfulness of the body and its limitations. This self-awareness helps one to practice humility and avoid injury, while also enabling oneself to build distress tolerance and stay in the pose longer. Holding this pose requires an enormous amount of patience, especially in the very beginning stages of regular practice. It is a misconception that flexible people are simply born flexible. We have to condition our body to become flexible through repeated, boring, consistent, and deliberate practice. Flexibility, like any other skill, is the result of many hundreds of hours of dedicated practice and, most of all, patience. Next, I like to practice fire log pose to get a further opening of my hips and a stretch in my lower body. You'll notice that many of these evening postures that I like to do are hip openers. I find them particularly relaxing and releasing of tension in my entire body and indeed my mind as well. So I find them to be emotionally grounding. Making sure that I keep my attention and focus on the breath and elongating my exhalations. By this time in my routine, by the way, I feel nice and sleepy, so it's proof positive that this routine, at least for me, is very effective in priming me for bedtime. This particular sequence of stretches, by the way, I've been doing for many, many, many years at this point, and I do what works for me. That's what I encourage all of you to do, is find the regimen that works best for you, and then keep practicing it, keep doing it. Now, coming into cow face pose, sometimes called happy cow, this was always one of my favorite poses and one of my dear teacher's favorite poses, so I always think of him to this day when I am in this posture. This pose improves posture, especially by counteracting the negative effects of prolonged sitting. This is a dynamic stretch for the shoulders, rear and front of thighs, and the result of incorporating this pose into your routine is an elongation and strengthening of the entire back body. Those of you who have attempted this pose or practice it regularly will know that the intricacies of this posture illuminate self-awareness, and in doing so, it offers a prime opportunity for us to lengthen and align the spine while concentrating on the steadiness of the breath. While practicing this pose, it is also essential to maintain the physical integrity, of course, by being mindful of the spine and the shoulders. So that concludes my bedtime stretching routine. I do this each and every night as I wind down for bedtime. I hope it was helpful or useful in some way. I like to end my evening routine with a seated reverse or inverted prayer pose, sometimes called penguin pose or westward prayer. This heart-opening posture increases strength and flexibility in the chest, the arms, and the shoulders. Benefits include expansion of the abdomen and the chest, stretching and opening of the shoulder joints, pectoral muscles, and entire upper back. I find that this pose greatly reduces stress and calms my mind, and it cultivates correct posture, of course, thus building confidence, and I also find that it relieves acute anxiety. Most practitioners, beginners and advanced level alike, will find various aspects of these poses, and indeed each and every yoga pose, depending on who is practicing, to be both mentally and physically challenging. This, in my opinion, is at the core of why we practice, and why the practice is a lifelong practice. But as my teachers always said to me, do not stress, do not suffer, just practice, just do, and keep doing. And most of all, be patient and humble, and you too will arrive naturally in your own time at the bliss that is your true nature, as the world of yoga is always forgiving.